This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com. The
alternate universes far and wide. This is episode 21. We're legal of Through the Looking Glass. I am your co-host, Scott Criscuolo. Thanks for joining us. Happy June. Hope, depending on what side of the world you live on, if you live on my side of the world, it's a little soupy, but not too bad. It's in the low 70s here in Connecticut. But if you're on my co-host's other side of the world, it's 3 degrees below zero. No, it's not. It'll never be that. It's too lucky. Good evening, Dave Hall. How are you?
I'm doing well. 21 today. 21 today. We're coming of age.
Yes.
So it's good. Very legal. I am, from an Australian perspective, freezing my ass off is the term we're going to use down here. Unfortunately, I recognise I know a lot of our listeners are based in the US, or maybe we've got some in the UK. I know it does not get as cold where I live as it does for them. I woke up this morning to 1 degree Celsius, which I looked up just before, is about 33 degrees Fahrenheit. So by my standards, bloody cold. But I'm sure by a lot of your standards, you're sitting there going, mate, you'd be wearing a t-shirt and shorts in that weather probably. So no, winter's well and truly hit down here.
Yeah. 21 Fahrenheit or Celsius?
No, 1 degree Celsius. So it was about 33 Fahrenheit, I think the conversion said.
Okay. So you're right at freezing. Okay. I got to admit, that's kind of cold for you.
It was very cold.
Yeah, that's kind of cold for you. So, yeah, I would be happy if it was 33 every day in my winters. Take one of the 3s off, and I get some of those days. So anyway, Dave, always a pleasure. We are legal, episode 21, and we hope you're enjoying the show. We hope you're enjoying everything here on the PTB Wrestling Network. A lot of great shows. We had a fun week last week. NWA Crock and Roll came back. Sean Kidd and the guys came back for another great episode, and they're back monthly basis, not bi-weekly, monthly basis. So that's fun. And all the other great shows we have here. We had to do some schedule shifting, so there won't be a Place to Be podcast until July. Some shifting of schedules and such, but of course the mothership will be back in July. We're up to we will be doing Breaking Point 2009 will be our next episode. So
closing in on 700, aren't you?
Yeah, we're about I think we're about 70 from 7 bills. Yeah, I think we're about 70. 628 I think was our last episode. So I think we're about 70, just over 70 episodes from 7 bills, which is just mind-boggling. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I look forward to the day, Dave, when you and I reach 700.
My goodness, that's 700. If we go one a month, that's a long way.
I know. Dave's like, I just want to get to 25. So anyway, it is June, and we did not do this topic last June. We did something else. So this June, we decided to do the topic that everybody likes to talk about in June, even though this pay-per-view or this concept has not happened in June since 2002. There have been 6 of them since, all of them spread out all over different parts of the year. So, Dave, what is our topic this evening?
Well, we're living in a world that is constantly changing, and I'm sure I know for Americans I know Americans probably aren't as over what sort of happens in some of the political systems elsewhere. I'm sure though a lot of you guys are fully aware that our beloved Queen Elizabeth passed away. English Queen Elizabeth passed away last year, and just recently we had the coronation of King Chuck. King Chucky, I think he's King Chucky II, I think, or the third, I can't remember. But King Chucky coronated, rose to the surface. He didn't have to win any tournaments, but wrestling is rife with royalty, royal tournaments, and we're going to jump back and we're going to have a little bit of a look at the King of the Ring.
Yes.
We're going to dart back in time. We're going to look at the history of King of the Ring, and we're gonna do something similar to what we did with the Royal Rumble a couple of years ago, and let's just look at go through some of the go have a look at the winners and maybe propose some alternate winners and how wrestling history at different points might have been different if WWE put the push behind someone else to win King of the Ring. So I think this is going to be a fun little episode today.
Yes, it was a concept I always loved. It goes back, of course. We're going to go back to the original King of the Rings. We're not just going to start in Dayton, Ohio in 1993. We're going to go all the way back. And I remember in the WWF magazines, because they would obviously pimp this, and I guess I kind of saw it on like PWI too, but I do kind of remember hearing and reading about King of the Ring in my in the mags when I was a kid. The one that comes to mind for me, and we'll delve into it a little bit, was when Savage won the house show tournament in 1987. What I find funny is that the first couple of years, like, the funny part about the house show ones that I thought was wild was that heels were wrestling heels, faces were wrestling faces. It was because it wasn't televised. You got kind of see some unique situations, stuff that Vince would never put on TV. Never put on TV.
Not a chance.
I mean, for God's sakes, it took a lot of cajoling for him to do face versus face at WrestleMania 6. And 5 years earlier, you wanted him to have heels wrestle heels? What are you, out of your mind? So excuse me. So it was a very unique concept. I love tournaments. This is one thing that me and my man, Dr. G, disagree on vehemently. He hates tournaments. He thinks they're a waste of time. They're crutches. I half agree with him. I do think tournaments are a great way when you're kind of stuck with a lot of good talent. I also think it's a good creator of good storylines. But there are times where it's a crutch and where you can use it way too much. I mean, what was it? Between 96 and 97, there was like 5 tournaments for the Intercontinental title, it seemed like, So,
in 98, and we'll get to this as we move on later, but in 98, they had 3 tournaments on WWF television or pay-per-view in the space of 4 months. 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
You had King of the Ring, you had the Intercontinental title tournament, and then you had the World title tournament, all in the space of a few months.
Right. Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. Absolutely nuts. It's wild. So I loved the King of the Ring concept, and I thought it was smart for WWF to create it as a pay-per-view in 1993, because obviously by 1993 WCW had been expanding their pay-per-view schedule. So Vince was always hooked with the Big Four, and then he added King of the Ring in 1993 to kind of bridge the gap, because the last probably 2 years, 1991 and 1992, that's a long, and we talked about this in past shows, Dave. It's a long gap between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. That 91 was the worst, because by the time you had the Hogan Warrior versus the Triangle of Terror, nobody gave a crap about any of those guys anymore. You might as well have just done Hogan Warrior 2 for the world title or something, nobody cared about Adnan or Mustafa, rest in peace Iron Sheik, and or Slaughter for that matter, as heels. Like, nobody cared by August. The rumblings were about Flair, and Sid was there. Like, you had all this fresh talent. Nobody wanted to deal with storylines from fucking March. So it was by 1993, it was much needed for WWF to have a pay-per-view to bridge the gap between early April for WrestleMania and the end of August for SummerSlam. Had to be done. It had to be done. So I was excited. I liked, and I remember seeing the tournaments in the write-ups in PWI, and then WWF Magazine would do like one of those, like mini little articles, pimping their tournaments and stuff. So I enjoyed it, Dave. I enjoyed the concept. What about you?
I always liked King of the Ring. I enjoy the tournament concept as well. I think it brings. I like tournaments because it brings an air of. I was going to say realism, and I know that's probably not the right word I look for, but it's contemporary with other sports. You get. Tennis uses a tournament concept. Every event is a tournament concept, getting down to the winner. Most, sports, the finals concepts, it's a tournament style, knockout and elimination to get to your winner. And so you had to go through other teams and other people to get there. So I like the tournament concept because it really brings a strong association to other sports and that need to overcome not just one person or one player or one team, but multiple teams, whether it be in one night or over a series of weeks or however you choose to do it. Everyone's focused on one goal, one prize to get there. So that's why I like tournaments. King of the Ring was on my radar, obviously very early. I've shared before, 1986 is the year I really launched into sort of being the fan that I became. And I remember clearly Harley Race being crowned the king on WWE television, but in the weeks leading up to the coronation, the interview segments talked about the fact that he'd won the King of the Ring tournament that year. So I was aware that it wasn't just a gimmick for Harley Race. It was something he'd won. He claimed a victory to earn that crown that he was then ran with as a gimmick. And then I remember 1988 I've shared was the year I got into the magazine, the Apter Mag is big time, and I discovered that the King of the Ring tournament was an annual thing. It was continuing, and that was the year that we'll get into it later, but 88 DiBiase and Savage faced off in the final of that King of the Ring. So it was on my radar early. I was aware of it. I remember when it hit pay-per-view, I was quite excited about the concept, and like you said, bridging the gap, giving us something different for WWE television. And at that time, it really continued that concept of you had WrestleMania and SummerSlam as sort of your two big events. And then the other three events were unique. You had Survivor Series, you had Royal Rumble, and you now had King of the Ring, a unique event, a one-night event, something you only get this one night in the year. And I think that made it a valuable addition to the calendar. I think in later years, as you went to your monthly events, the King of the Ring sort of then became a bit of a sore thumb for the company. I think it was that, now we've got to do a tournament, which we've got all our storylines building, and as the approach to business shifted for WWE to the weekly television and the monthly, weekly Raws and monthly pay-per-views, they sort of, I think the King of the Ring sort of became a bit of a, how do we manage that when we've got all our other stuff? So you went down to just, we're just going to do semifinals and finals. You changed the structure. Then you had the brand split, and they changed the structure again and sort of de-emphasized the King of the Ring as a result. But it was something that I look forward to, especially the early ones that are really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think I think it was a good way to really elevate the mid card. Look at your roster and go, all right, who's the 6 or 7 guys that we need to really start moving and shaking for the next year, towards intercontinental level and of course world title level. So it wasn't as much of a crutch as everybody says it is, because if you're going to have a tournament with a bunch of slugs, then the crowd's not going to care. So you really needed to do the right thing when it came to booking these tournaments and booking the correct matchups. Read the room, I think. And there's years, 1995, where no one read the room. And that's why we're here tonight, to go through the looking glass to the alternate universe, take a look at these King of the Rings, and maybe figure out what could have been done to possibly fix them. Now we're not gonna go 20 minutes on every year, because some years they got it right, so we won't belabor the ones that worked, because there's no need for us to talk about it. We can, but there are years where we definitely could have picked, someone else to win the crown and utilize it, because there were years where it was not utilized. As a matter of fact, a decent hunk of the Attitude Era, well, the early part of the Attitude Era was not used well at all, and they got a little better as time progressed. And it just totally, died. But other years worked totally perfectly. So as we move ahead, Dave, year by year, I think we're going to see some very interesting scenarios for some other people, where it could have been definitely used properly. So I'm ready. Lay it out for us.
But let's go back. And as we said, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. And the King of the Ring tournament started first time in 1985. It was a house show event held in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And, it was, I'm not sure. It probably didn't get a lot of promotion, probably not even on television. It would have got promoted in the local, syndicated stuff, and, come along, check it out. But, it was, first time 85, and it's, we're not going to go through the whole card, but when you look at this card, it is a unique event. As you said, this is a time when we get some very unique matchups, because the first King of the Ring winner was none other than the magnificent Morocco.
Correct.
Who beat, as you just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the recently departed, rest in peace, as you said, Iron Sheik. Now, this is just like right off the bat, you look at this going, my goodness, you've got two heels in the final. And when you look at the tournament structure, it's interesting to see who Sheiky Baby beat, because Sheiky Baby beat B. Brian Blair in the first round. Now, I can really imagine what happened there. I'm pretty certain Iron Sheik refused to lay down for him.
Yep.
In the semi-final, he beat Brunzell, so he beat both Killer Bees. But in his quarter-final match, he knocked over Ricky Steamboat, and that by pinfall. I don't know any details about it, but that's that really shocked me. And then you've got Morocco coming down the other path. Well, at that time in '85, Morocco and Steamboat were in a massive feud. I'm flabbergasted that they didn't book it to be Steamboat and Morocco in the final. And to throw it off, like, you've got this first time event booking a heel final. They're not sending anyone home happy.
Right. The booking of this is odd, because if we look at it, like I said, we won't go through the matches, but a couple of weird matchups. So Paul Orndorff, who had just recently turned babyface after WrestleMania 1, he and Cowboy Bob Orton went to a double DQ. So some tells me, by the way, it was a summer tournament, and took place in July, and it was at Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough, the old home of the Patriots. In fact, the first two took place there. This was a very New England-y tournament. Vince was definitely reading the geography room, because we'll tell you where the next few were as well. It's funny we bring up Steve. So Orton and Orndorff, they were obviously feuding, and that was a double DQ, which allowed former World Wrestling Federation champion Pedro Morales to move on to the semis. Tito Santana and Jim Brunzell wrestled to a 20-minute draw. So how did they determine who wins the match? They flipped a coin. Could you imagine and Jim Brunzell won it? So if you're Tito Santana, you're like, I just wrestled for 20 minutes and I don't win this match because of a coin flip? I mean, who the hell came up with that concept?
And yet earlier in the event, you have a double DQ, Orndorff and Orton, and Pedro got a bye. So why after a time limit draw do we have to send someone through to the semis? Why couldn't Iron Sheik have just gotten asked to the final?
Right. Crazy. Funny that Ricky Steamboat and Iron Sheik wrestled in the quarters, because for anybody, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please do. 2 weeks ago on the NWA Saturday Special, Dr. G and I did a special episode where we we went through the career of the Iron Sheik and his as a tribute episode to him. And he and Ricky Steamboat actually, Dave, in case you didn't know this, actually had a pretty great feud in Crockett in the early 80s over the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title. In fact, Steamboat beat Sheik in a Falls Count Anywhere match on a house show. Tell me how, in 1980. Tell me how awesome that match would have been.
That would have been good when Sheiky was really probably at the peak of his in-ring prowess. So yeah, no, I did listen to that episode, and that surprised me when I heard it.
Yeah, crazy, right? Thank you for listening, Dave. And for those who haven't yet, please do. And also here, not only here, but over on the No-So, Ryan and Keith, I think it was Ryan and Keithy, did a tribute episode of their own. So both feeds did exceptional Iron Sheik tribute episodes. So check both out if you haven't had a chance. So no disrespect to Don Morocco, but I'm thinking to myself, why do you have Don Morocco and Iron Sheik? Why did you have heel versus heel? It's kind of odd.
I don't know. I'm wondering. I at least I get Don Morocco maybe winning, because I think this was just as they were preparing Morocco for a series. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just around the time they were doing the house show series with Hogan. So it would make sense that Morocco is, obviously being prepped and built for, for a match against Hogan. That would make sense. But why have him beat another heel? That one just stumps me. So,
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and again, like I said, yeah, I get that. But for a first up event, I would have thought they might have liked to have sent the fans home happy. And I'm thinking, why not send Steamboat through to the final? He's been in the company for about 6 months now. Great opportunity to really, we know they put the rocket under him. We know they're building him. We know they like him, and we know where his career ends up going in WWE. I don't get why they're not putting Steamboat over. Or on the other side of the coin, Junkyard Dog, another guy who was recent to the company, and within the last 12 months, and very popular guy. Either of them being put through to the final would have made sense.
Right. Yeah. And they kind of treated it. It was almost like what Crockett would do the following year with the Crockett Cup tournament. You had a tournament, and then you would cap it off with a world title match. Like in the Crockett Cup days, you would have the tag team tournament, and then you would have Ric Flair defend the world title. Well, in 1985, you had the tournament, and then you had Hulk Hogan defend the World Wrestling Federation title against Nikolai Volkov, and of course he won it. So they did dangle a carrot, like, listen, if you enjoy this great King of the Ring tournament, and we will reward you with a look at at the champ. And then, of course, Hulk Hogan would come out, and he would, he would defend the world title. But I would have I would have even had, even Orndorff win this tournament. Like you're saying, Orndorff or JYD or some babyface to just kind of elevate, unless you were thinking about what heel you were looking ahead to maybe challenge Hogan at WrestleMania 2. I don't know if at that point in '85, you were thinking about getting Nikita Koloff, which was always a rumor back then. And I don't think in July of '85 they were thinking about King Kong Bundy as the big guy to face Hogan in the cage. So I'm curious to think if that was an idea of theirs, and we'll talk about that with these future non-pay-per-view tournaments. If that was Vince's thinking to get a guy ready for a big push either on the IC level or the world title level. But Don Morocco winning this tournament was almost kind of like a I don't want to say like a lifetime achievement award, but like, we're probably not going to do much with you otherwise for the next few years. So here, take this.
Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway, Magnificent Morocco won the actual inaugural King of the Ring tournament in July of 1985. So.
All right. Well, we moved to 86, and as I mentioned earlier, 86 was probably the first year they really hyped this tournament somewhere else, because this is the year that the great, legendary, handsome Harley Race transitioned from being handsome to being a king by winning the King of the Ring tournament once again at Foxborough and beating. Now, think about this, maybe not so much in 86, but think about the implications of this match for some of the long-term fans of professional wrestling. Harley Race, the former, at the time, 6-7-time NWA World Champion, defeated former WWF World Champion Pedro Morales in the final of the tournament. So
right.
that's a pretty big. I actually don't mind that final as a concept, because you've got two guys that had a big history. A lot of those long-term wrestling fans would have known that, and just the concept we always, it's that dream match concept from 5 years earlier. Yeah, it's 5 years late, but the dream match concept. We get to see these two guys who we always wondered what might have happened, and Harley goes over. I think this was a good outcome myself with with how they harnessed the result into the gimmick. I think this was a good outcome.
I agree. There were buys. There were a couple of buys. We had some substitutions. One match that made me that I thought was pretty funny. The defending tournament champion, the Magnificent Morocco, wrestled to a 20-minute draw with the Hot Rod, Roddy Piper. How fun was that match?
Could only have been like days or weeks after his return to the company. Like that's right around the time they did they were doing the whole flower shop Piper's Pit battle.
Yeah,
with him.
I mean,
so that was a big match when you're considering that Morocco was caught up big time in that Adrian Adonis, Cowboy Bob Orton, Roddy Piper storyline.
Right. We actually have some. If you look on the wiki, there's actually some descriptions of the matches. Harley Race beat George Steele by DQ after Steele rammed Race into one of the golf carts. Morocco and Piper wrestled to a draw. Nikolai Volkov pinned Dan Spivey. JYD beat Paul Orndorff by DQ after Orndorff attacked the ref. And
this is right at the time of Orndorff's heel turn. So he'd just gone back to heel, turning on Hogan.
And then Pedro pinned Rudy Diamond, who subbed for Bob Orton. Yeah, there's an upgrade.
That sounds like that had to be a last minute thing. Like maybe,
totally last minute.
Maybe Orton got caught, missed flight, car delays, some sort of legitimate issue, and they've gone, oh, we need someone who's a local, let's look up the local scrub talent, and who can we bring in just for a quick quick lay down.
Yeah, exactly. So we get through the tournament. There's two non-tournament matches, by the way. Bruno Sammartino defeated somebody called the Designated Hitman, which was actually Pete Doherty was the Designated Hitman, which is pretty funny.
Duke of Dorchester.
I know, the Duke. And in the main event, I kind of want to watch this match. The British Bulldogs, in a rematch from WrestleMania 2, defeated the Dream Team in a steel cage. So that might have been fun.
I mean, fun.
Yeah. And Harley defeated Billy Jack Haynes. Pedro defeated Nikolai. So yes, in a match that probably Dave Hall probably happened in like 1980, most likely. Or 79. I mean, Harley was not when Pedro was world champion between 71 and 73. Harley had not reached quite that level yet. I don't think he'd win his first world title. I think he won it in 73 because then he beat was
it Dory?
No, it was yeah, he did beat he did beat Dory, and then he lost to Jack Briscoe. So they weren't at the same level at that point, but I would say like 79, 80 when Pedro was still kind of in the upper mid card. Yeah. I'm sure him and Harley probably wrestled at the Orange Bowl and all those places where Pedro and where Harley and like Bob Backlund wrestled when they were both world champions. So it was probably pretty great. So I think this was good for Harley because it created a gimmick. Was there anybody else that could have won it in 86? Well, I don't know. I mean, could Harley have been a good opponent for Hogan for the world title? I think in historical purposes, yes, but I also don't know if that would have sold, WrestleMania 2.
Not at that point. No, not at that point. They would have. We know that they ended up doing a series of matches in 87 when they'd had time to, from a WWF perspective, build Harley up. So, I mean, if you're looking at another heel who could potentially have won it in 86, realistically, maybe only Orndorff. If you're wanting it from a perspective of building someone up for Hogan, Orndorff sort of coming off a heel turn and then winning the tournament might have been a value. I'm not sure there's anyone else out there. Other guys, in 86 again. If you're looking at people that you can use you wanting to use it as a build or a push point. Yeah. Billy Jack Haynes had obviously just come in recently, and he got to the semis. Maybe you look at, do we want to give Billy Jack a bit of a push and something to hold on to as he's entered the company? But I feel that this is one of those ones where it was just the right person won and it was used in the right way.
Well, obviously, I'm going to assume, unlike the year before where Vince wasn't sure what he wanted to do for WrestleMania 2, I'm wondering if by even this point in the summer that they were already thinking that they were going to do Hogan Andre for WrestleMania 3. So, and obviously Andre was a machine at this point in July of 86. And I don't think the discussions of, Bobby Heenan, had happened yet. So I think this was more just building up somebody to take it to the next level. And I have no problem with Harley winning this because it created the King storyline and pretty solid, from here on out. So I'll stick with Harley winning. I think that was a fine move for that moment. So yeah, I agree.
All right. Okay. So we moved to 87. And this tournament was held, moved to something a little bit closer for you, I would believe. Would that not be Providence, Rhode Island?
Yes.
Starting to get into some close home territories for you.
Yes. Also, they moved it to the fall, seemed like it was Labor Day weekend, September 4th, 1987, and it's at one of myself and Mr. Rozzero's favorite haunts, the Providence Civic Center, the PCC. We also once again had a pretty large, and it seems like, Dave, every year the brackets get bigger. 16 guys in this tournament.
Yeah, and look, we won't go through. We're not going to go through all the matches. We've been saying that, so I really don't want to go through. But just, my goodness, they've got some scrubs in this tournament. When you look at the time, I mean, it's filled with tag guys like, at the time, this is 87, Haku, tag team, Brutus Beefcake. He's just gone face. Rick Martel, Dan Spivey, SD Jones and Seeker. There's the great SD Jones. What a match up. Dangerous, Danny Davis, Palmer, Brunzell, Rombat. A lot of guys that are just real lower end talents. But this tournament ends up being won by the recently turned face, Randy Savage, the Macho Man, with a win in the final against King Kong Bundy. That's I think, once again, this is strike while the iron's hot. They've just turned him babyface. They are looking at really giving him a bit of a push, and here's the shove. We want everyone to, give him that chance. And some of them, I think they've done it well because, they gave him a semi-final victory over Danny Davis. Now, that would have been a hoot to watch. Although I'm not sure you wanted to watch 9 minutes of it, unless it was 9 minutes of Randy Savage beating the snot out of Danny Davis. But yeah, and then a final victory over King Kong Bundy. Look, it's clear that it's all about getting Savage over as the babyface and really starting to prepare him for the next move that they're looking for him.
They also did use a little tag feud action because at the time in 1987, the Islanders were feuding with the Can-Am Connection. So the Haku-Rick Martel match in the quarters was very fitting. It ended up being a draw, this time only 15 minutes. Of course, Tom Zenk would quit because he was a big crybaby. And we would end up, of course, getting the great Strikeforce. And about a month and a half after this tournament, Strikeforce defeated the Hart Foundation to win the tag team titles. So big push there, but I'm agreeing with you, Dave. Like, how did Dangerous Danny Davis and Randy Savage go 9 minutes and 6 seconds? You got a lot of fucking nerve, Danny Davis, to get a match that long against arguably the hottest guy in the company at that moment. Not counting.
And look on the same event, like you talked about non-tournament matches. On the same event, you've got Jake the Snake wrestling Honky Tonk Man for the IC title. So you might very well have a scenario where a lot of that match is actually maybe Honky Tonk Man distracting Savage heading down the aisle, being attacked from behind, like a lot of shenanigans that would draw the match out in match length. But probably, I think, when they're in the ring, I think it would have been complete domination and, sort of Davis only lasting 9 minutes because Honky or Jimmy Hart are distracting Savage and he, chases them to protect Liz or, some of that sort of stuff that we saw on Saturday night's main event in 87.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And so, I mean, I don't think we have to go any further. I think Savage winning the 87 King of the Ring was a total right move right there. Total right move.
All right. So we move to 88. And this is an interesting one because our winner of the King of the Ring in 88 is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
Yes.
Beating the man who beat him at WrestleMania 4, the world champion, Randy Savage. Now, this just jumped out at me as when I remember seeing this result in 88, I was shocked by it because you were at the back end of the DiBiase Savage feud. DiBiase was about to move on, like you're moving Savage on, they're basically being moved into different directions. And all of a sudden, in the non-title match, Savage gets the win. Now, I wonder if this was a bit of a make-up to DiBiase for not having won at Mania and obviously having to put Savage over for pretty well the last 5 months in all their rematches. I wonder if it was a little bit of a make-up, a do-good by DiBiase, like, we just want to give you some props for having done so much for us this year and putting Savage putting him over. I think he beat him won by count out, but still Savage allowing, being beaten by the man who he's been beating all over the country for 6 months.
Yeah. Yep. And I was kind of going with a theme about the whole, this tournament show would also have like one super big match. We talked about 85 and 86. 87, it was Jake and the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title. Of course, that match came from WrestleMania 3. Honky, of course, retained the title. Jake won by DQ. The big match at 88 was... oh, good Lord.
You're going to enjoy this one.
This is atrocious. Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Dino Bravo in a flag match. That must have been riveting.
You mean you didn't pay to go see this one?
Riveting. Bad enough with Duggan, and then you got Dino Bravo, who by then was just so freaking bloated. The interesting part, I don't think we had any draws. This is the first tournament where there were no draws.
There wasn't a draw, but there was a double count out because they had Bad News and Hercules went to a double count out, which gave Randy Savage a bye. And it's interesting because when I look at this tournament, if there's one person I would consider putting over in this tournament that didn't go, it would be Bad News Brown. Because this would be right up his alley. The loner, going to beat everyone, on the rise to, it wasn't long after this that he started his series of matches with Savage. I wouldn't have had him face Savage in the tournament, but Bad News Brown would have been a legitimate consideration to win this one.
Yeah. I wonder if it was and what's sad is Savage won by count out. He was, I guess, distracted by Virgil, who he beat earlier in the tournament. So that's kind of a crappy finish. Yeah. I like the DiBiase Ron Bass. Clearly, Ron Bass got paid off.
He won by forfeit. For those listening in and don't know what happened, Ted DiBiase wins his semi-final against the outlaw Ron Bass by forfeit. Clearly you just know DiBiase's in the ring, giving him money to walk out. So.
Yep, apparently faking an injury, which is pretty funny. We had another year of a jobber replacing a regular guy. Iron Mike Sharp replaced the Warlord, and he actually won the match. He actually beat Boris Zukov. How bad was your career at this point, Boris Zukov? And then Mike Sharp would lose in the quarters to the Red Rooster, which might be even worse. Yeah. So DiBiase winning just kept him a hot heel. Yeah. Obviously, very weird that this tournament.
I just don't think he needed it by this point. He was a main event heel. He'd been main eventing all year. I just don't think he needed the win. And like I said earlier, unless it was a bit of a make good for having not been given the title earlier in the year.
Yeah. It's funny that this is also the first time that the world champion is in the tournament, because God forbid Hogan wasn't going to be in any of those other tournaments. And
that obviously handcuffs them as well, because what do? You can't have your world champion lose to a scrub. You can't have him.
To be honest, Dave, I would have done almost kind of like a WrestleFest show that they did in Milwaukee that summer. I would have DiBiase and Savage maybe main event instead of that garbage Bravo Duggan match. Maybe have Savage DiBiase for the world title.
Yeah, and for maybe in a steel cage or something like that.
Right, exactly, and then just have somebody else win the tournament.
Like I said, maybe like Bad News.
Yeah, Bad News Brown. I like that one. Jesus, there's nobody else here.
I think with what they were doing at the time, I think Bad News would have been the perfect person to put over because he was on the rise. They were building him up, and it would fit his character and gimmick. I'll fight anyone. I'll beat anyone. I don't care. And you could have done a couple of offhand matches in a tournament like that. Have him face a heel in one match because he would just go out and beat him up. He wouldn't care. So. Yeah, that would have been. I think that could have been fun for the audience. And then, like you said, Savage and DiBiase in a separate match, not in the tournament.
Right. So yeah. So if there's another guy you would have besides DiBiase winning, I think I agree with you. I think it would be Bad News Brown. So.
All right. So we move to 89. And actually, we'll move to 89. And this one's interesting. Again, not going through the whole tournament, but the King of the Ring in 1989 is Tito Santana defeating his former teammate, the man who called him a loser.
A loser.
At WrestleMania.
He's a loser. Yes.
He beat Rick Martel. This is one of those times. Gee, I wish this was televised.
Yeah.
Because this is Martel and Tito. I think this is the perfect end to a tournament final. The two feuding guys who've been feuding since WrestleMania meeting in the final, and the babyface gets the win. That's how you book a tournament.
Yep. So Tito Santana does get his win that we never really technically saw, I think, until Survivor Series. Martel always got the better of him. So we did not get any no more draws. We did get another double DQ, Hercules and the Anvil, Jim Neidhart, which gave Akeem, which would have been Justin's pick to win the tournament, all the way to the semifinals. And Tito beat him. Really nothing else here. And the non-tournament match was Dusty Rhodes and the Big Boss Man. So another tournament another match from a from a feud that kind of started throughout 89.
But yeah, I like this outcome. I think, not so much from the perspective of does Tito need a King of the Ring? Like, is it going to boost his career or do something for him coming out? Don't think so. For me, this is about you've got the two feuding guys fighting to get through this tournament to meet each other in the final. Right. I think that's a good one night story, and I think it would have been fun to be there to see that.
Yeah, I think so too. I absolutely think so too. I mean, again, most of this tournament's. Who the hell's Bill Woods? Oh, Bill Woods was substituting for Hillbilly Jim, and Nikolai Volkov was substituting for, I guess it would have been the Widowmaker, Barry Windham. So I mean, this was pretty much
just after Windham obviously had the various personal issues that led to him, disappearing from the company.
Right. Well, I mean, 88, he had just gotten there because 88 he was all in Crockett. They joined the Horse in 88.
Yeah, he came in just after WrestleMania, the Widowmaker gimmick. He wasn't on the SummerSlam card, but he was supposed to be on the Survivor Series card in the build-up. And the talk and the stuff that you read, online is that they were preparing Windham for a series of matches with the champ, with Hogan at the time, just a house show series. And then I think it's all got tied in with Blackjack and Kendall getting involved, getting arrested for some counterfeiting stuff, and Barry basically took time off to support the family and then never came back.
Nope. But I mean, like, there's nobody in this tournament that would have done anything for anybody. To be honest, I think Tito was kind of another lifetime achievement award. I mean, who else would you have had here that you could have really pushed? I mean,
maybe that's the impact of Windham pulling out. Maybe Barry Windham might have been someone who really would have benefited from it if he hadn't pulled out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think this was always meant to be Tito and Martel, and it was more to be to kind of be a finisher offer or something for their feud. This obviously was in October, so it was a good month and a half from the Survivor Series in Chicago, where Martel and Tito would have another row, and then they would have a couple matches, I think, in Saturday Night's Main Event. So, yeah, I might as well just let Tito win this, because if we have to stay within the confines of this tournament, there really ain't anybody else that would have done anything. Maybe Barry Windham. So, but the main event was Dusty Rhodes and the Big Boss Man in a regular singles match. So,
all right.
So 1990, Vince forgets. Or
too busy that year to run a tournament.
Yeah. So.
The King of the Ring has a year off and comes back in 91. This is our last non-televised King of the Ring event, and very, very famous and very well-known non-televised one, because 91's winner was none other than the Hitman himself, Bret Hart, and something that was acknowledged. It was acknowledged in the magazines, and I'm pretty certain there was acknowledgement in the build-up to the 93 King of the Ring that Hart had previously won a King of the Ring tournament. So, this wasn't something that was kept, sort of in the past. We forget about it. This became part of Bret Hart's resume as he moves on in his career.
Right. Looking at the tournament, the only other guy, and I think it's kind of obvious, there's two guys actually, and they end up wrestling each other in the quarters, and then they get double DQ'd. So at this point, the tournament was in September, so it was only like a week and a half before, Dave, that Bret Hart had won the Intercontinental title from Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam. So, having already won the IC title, I feel like he probably didn't need it. What I would have done is I would have moved the two guys at the bottom of the bracket that would end up double DQing, and I would have had them in the final. And that is The Undertaker and Sid Justice. I would have had those guys wrestle in the final.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a great match. As it were, they would wrestle in the quarters, and there'd be a double DQ, which, guess what? Allowed Bret to get a bye into the final. Which is
it's weird. It's weird, this house show concept of giving, good guys getting buys into final, and then his opponent, he beats IRS. He beats IRS in the final. Well, IRS had to face someone every round.
Yeah.
He faced the Berserker. So there's another heel first round matchup.
Yep.
Then he beats Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. Oh, there you go. We've beaten Hacksaw. That cut.
Woohoo! Yay, IRS.
Give the tournament to IRS. He beat Hacksaw.
Yes.
And then he beats Jerry Sags in the semi. So he's beating heels left and right. He's going every round, and Bret Hart gets to beat Pete Doherty in the first round, and Skinner in the second, and gets a bye into the final. So they really, it's sort of almost backwards booking there. Normally you'd have it the other way around. The face has got to overcome the odds, and the heel gets the easy road. So really weird.
Strange.
But I agree with you. I think, I don't think Hart needed it. He didn't need it at this point. Maybe IRS, giving IRS the win. He's just, he hasn't been back in the company very long. It might have helped give him a bit of a boost. Or like you said, Taker and Sid in the final would have maybe been a better option.
Right. I agree. I think Bret, and now we were actually starting to care even less about the non-tournament matches, because the one non-tournament match was was the Beverly Brothers and the Bushwhackers. So
Oh,
we weren't giving a crap about the non-tournament matches anymore, which I thought was pretty funny.
I'm sure I'm going to pay for that one.
Oh God.
All right.
So I definitely think, no disrespect to Brett, love you, Hitman, but you had literally just won the IC title. I don't think you needed to win this tournament. I would have had either Taker, particularly considering what Taker was going to end up doing in November anyway. You would have thought that maybe giving him the tournament title would have been a little bit of an extra boost. And then Sid was like red hot as a face at that moment. So, and honestly, if the date's right, it might have been the 2 nights before. What would have been cool, Dave, if this was a Saturday night, he was making his television debut on primetime 2 nights later. Why don't we get a Ric Flair appearance? Not in the tournament, but maybe just show up.
Maybe.
It's non-televised. A lucky crowd in Providence would have seen it. And then 2 nights later on primetime is when Flair made his official TV debut. But why not have him, show up? Why not have him show up?
Absolutely. Sure, it would have been good.
It would have been pretty great.
Yeah. All righty. Well, let's move into the televised era, and we don't need to cover the tournaments as much because I think most people know how they pan out and how they go. So, 1993, Bret the Hitman Hart wins the tournament. Very famous. We know, really Hart was used to put over the gimmick of the King of the Ring tournament. 3 great matches in one night. And it boosts into his next feud with Jerry the King Lawler. So a very, very famous tournament, famous winner. Where do you stand on that one? Do you think that's one that you would you would keep that? Do you think that was the best way to go?
Well, obviously. And this has been discussed a lot. Obviously, everyone thinks that Bret was getting a consolation prize for all the fucking shenanigans that went down in Vegas at WrestleMania 9. Bret was kind of like, yeah, sorry we fucked that up, but we kind of had to do that. But here's this really cool tournament. All right, whatever. And then, of course, it would lead to a 2-year-long feud between Bret and Jerry Lawler. Obviously, the highlight for me of this tournament is arguably, debatably, what I think is a better match between Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect than the one at SummerSlam 91. I've always considered this match better, my personal opinion. Yeah. The match is fantastic. I believe it's on my top 100 GWWE, I think. Yeah. The tournament overall is good. Bigelow looked really good. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the undercard. This isn't a pay-per-view review, but it was cool that, Yoko finally ended that Hogan bullshit. I'm trying to remember the Shawn and Crush IC title match.
Oh, it sucked dirt. Yeah.
Shawn was in his pancakes and steroids phase. He was getting a little plump. But I don't know who else you could have had here.
I think, I'll throw it out here. Like I said, I think Hart's the right person in terms of what they were trying to get on pay-per-view with the one night tournament and launching into the Lawler feud. But the other person who might have benefited from a victory here is Perfect. And sure. I say that not only because he can do the same thing in the ring, but Perfect has gone from, if we just track his year, in January, he's top of the card. He puts Ric Flair out of the company on Raw. He's then wrestling Luger at Mania. He's slowly moving down the card. He's been dealing with Shawn Michaels since WrestleMania, and he only goes further down. He goes down, and then we have the Diesel situation, and then he bails out of the company because he doesn't like how he's being used. You give him the victory here, you can legitimately catapult him back to the top of the card. You could have had him face Yokozuna at SummerSlam, or, however you want to build it. But I think a win to Perfect would have helped him maintain in the eyes of everyone that main event status. He's still a top guy. He's one guy I think would have benefited from a victory in the tournament outside of the Hitman.
Yeah, I think so. Particularly since Perfect would get a IC title shot at SummerSlam '93. Obviously, at this point in June, Luger was a heel, and he and Tatanka would have a very frustrating draw in those quarterfinals. I think Luger would have been a pretty awesome pick, but he was a heel, and I don't know what their plan was as a heel.
And I don't think with the plans to with their intention to have Yoko go over Hogan for the title, they weren't going to put a heel over the tournament as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. So the only other guy I see that could have gained from this was Perfect. Otherwise, I think they were going to give it to Brett the whole time as, again, a consolation prize for, doing the right thing at WrestleMania 9 or not doing the right thing while the wrong thing was being executed. Staying out of the way of the wrong thing. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
So 93 we could leave alone. I think Brett would be fine. But your pick of Perfect would have been a fine alternative.
Yeah. Well, 94 I think is a more leave alone than any other tournament I think we're ever going to talk of. 1904, famous for the King of Hearts being crowned, the mighty, the great, the legendary Owen Hart, brother of the first year's winner. He wins this tournament to continue his build of being, I'm going to emulate my brother. I'm going to do everything that he did, and I'm going to do it better. And I honestly cannot think of anyone in 94 who would have been better winning the tournament. I think it's a lay down misère that Owen is the perfect choice that year.
Yep, I don't think there's anybody else. I don't think there's anybody else. Totally. Owen's own. It's Owens to win. Owned.
Yeah.
Brother Owen. Right. OWN. Owned. Tim Capel says it the best. Hey, my little brother Owen. Yeah, there's nobody else. There's nobody else. There's nobody else. The only other guy maybe, but he was already getting a title shot, was Diesel.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The only other person who would benefit it would be Diesel, and it would have been interesting if he'd been in the tournament. And I guess if you'd had Owen face Brett, I beat you at WrestleMania, therefore I should get the title shot. You could have put Diesel over, and I think if you gone that route, I don't think anyone would have been disappointed. But I don't think a Diesel victory would have been anywhere near as revered as the way Owen was able to use it to boost his career.
Yeah. I mean, if Diesel, if you had a different guy, Owen, obviously with Brett being champion, you weren't going to have Razor win the tournament, but that would have been pretty fun. I could see Razor winning the tournament. Obviously, the two of them made it to the final, which made perfect sense. This is one of the more, I will say this too, as we continue on, Dave, this is one of the more logical brackets.
Yeah.
Diesel or Razor and Owen in the final was perfect.
Razor
Razor
Diesel in a final would have been perfect. Like would have played into storyline as well. So, right, like I said, Diesel maybe, but I think I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change anything about that one.
Right. Definitely. So we're good. We're good. Owen stays winner.
All right. Well, now we're going to talk about the probably the most reviled tournament, King of the Ring tournament in history, one of the most hated ones, and clearly one of the biggest missteps they ever did. The 95 tournament. Now, we actually contemplated booking this whole event as our podcast episode today, but we didn't go down this route. So we've probably got to be careful we don't spend too long on this, but we all know, Mabel winning in 95, everyone knows it was why. It did not go down well with the fans. It did not go down well in Philadelphia. Very, very very famous for the ECW chants and the this sucks and Mabel sucks, and yeah, big fan backlash on this one on the night at the event. And I guess when you look at the company at the time, I mean, you don't have to stick to the bracket. When you look at the company at the time, it is really hard to work out what do you do. I mean, here's a couple of options, but I don't know whether anything. I really, I'm not sure where you would go this. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this one. But a couple of options. You could have considered putting Yokozuna over, have him win King of the Ring for the same purpose of a match with Diesel at SummerSlam. Yoko at least has the history of being a former champion and being good in the ring. But we all know that Yoko's weight was causing an issue. Other options would be to go the babyface route and either have Shawn win, or maybe have Bam Bam Bigelow win this one as sort of a bit of a, the babyface push having just switched sides and all the impact of coming out of Mania of losing to Lawrence Taylor, and it was all supposed to be, well, we're gonna give you a big push outside after WrestleMania is how the story goes. The part of the reason he was able to agreed to lose, and then Shawn goes face, and Bigelow finds himself in sort of the number 4, number 5, number 6 babyface position. A Bigelow win at least would have, I think, been acceptable to the audience as a, here's a babyface, a bit of a push for him, but it's never going to amount to anything long term. It's a difficult year, 95. Do you have any thoughts? Who would you have put over?
Well, I think one of the easy ones for me would have been Shawn. I would have had Shawn win this tournament. I don't know if I would have had Taker. The tournament meant nothing to him at this point. I probably would have had Shawn. I probably would have had Shawn win this tournament. Obviously, the show being in Philly, that of course added to the antagonism of it, because we all know what was going on in Philly during the mid-90s. I probably would have had Shawn.
Yeah,
I probably would have had Shawn. I like Yoko, because if you're specifically picking a king, because it wasn't until 2002 that it was officially said that a King of the Ring winner gets the SummerSlam title shot. If that was your plan, all right, maybe.
Yeah.
But if it's just to elevate, I would have probably given it to Shawn. Fresh baby face.
Does Shawn need nation? He's already number 2 behind Diesel.
Yeah, the only reason I say yes, Dave, is because Shawn is a freshly minted babyface. So I think this might have helped his babyface cause. I mean, I'm not in love with the idea, but he's the only other guy I could think of. And you look at the rest of this tournament, this entire tournament's crap. I mean,
I guess overcoming the odds, sort of here's Shawn, a bit of a smaller guy, and he, having to fight each. This would be one where you do the whole. He has to fight every round, and then whoever he meets in the semi or the final, they've had buys. Sort of guys have had that, that extra round off, or he's got to beat, he's got to beat Yoko and Mabel, and you could have him sort of overcoming massive odds to win. That would work for Shawn.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, because you don't know what the plan for SummerSlam is yet. I mean, again, we really don't need. We don't need any more garbage, bad fat guys going up against Diesel, because Diesel right now is already, that title reign is already starting to circle the bowl. I just think Shawn would have been a good boost for the company. Being in Philly, I mean, any other city, you might have gotten away with it, regardless of who wins, but being in Philly, and already the crowd fucking hating everything about this show. Yeah. And they're already, probably shit-faced, because I know Philly well, and where the Core State Spectrum is, where this show took place, is only like 10 or 15 minutes away from the ECW arena. So, I mean, who knows? They might have just crawled across the parking lot, and we all saw what they did. So, I think the whole point was trying to be very particular, and I don't think Vince realized who even ECW was, and of course we all know what he would do with them over the next couple of years. But I thought he was thinking, listen, Diesel's big, he's nasty, big guy against because Vince just spent so many years trying to figure out how to redo the Hogan formula of 85 to, 89.
Yeah.
And just couldn't. Just couldn't. I would have just had Shawn win just to get a nice pop. Have him wrestle like a gauntlet. That's my pick. I would have gone with Shawn.
Yeah.
I like the Yoko pick. You could have kind of rebuilt him. But Yoko was just not in the shape, Dave.
No, I think that was the thing that was working against Yoko is he put on so much weight, and I'm not sure that they were comfortable anymore with Yoko being in a main event position at the fear of what might happen with his weight. Physically how that might impact him. I think that was their fear.
Yeah. So. Again, we won't belabor the 95 because we want to stay positive. Yeah, we won't go any further. But I think anybody but Mabel. There's your answer.
Yes.
Anybody but Mabel.
All right. Well, 96. I don't think we're going to spend very long on this one. 96 was going to be the legendary Triple H.
Yes, it was.
And surely we want Triple H to win the tournament, don't you, Scott? We'll just leave it at that. Triple H wins and we can move on in 96? No.
Yep,
no,
exactly.
No.
The backup pick was absolute garbage. No.
Obviously, 90, as we know, Triple H got himself out of the tournament through some backstage issues.
Yes, before you go any further, Dave, I have to quote the Triple H Thy Kingdom Come DVD. Thanks to his best friend Shawn, Triple H had to eat plates of shit, as he says in the on his Thy Kingdom Come DVD. He had to eat plates of shit. So Triple H did not win this tournament. Obviously, Stone Cold did. But you know what's funny? Give me 2 minutes, Dave, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
I do find it funny, though, because think about this. I was thinking about this today in my mind while I was mentally preparing for our show. Think about this, though. We talk about, did a win help anybody? Think hard about this. From when Stone Cold won the King of the Ring to when he faced Brett at the Survivor Series in November. Did winning this tournament really do anything for him? Not really. I mean, yes, we get the Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass and the ripcord was pulled and life would never be the same in professional wrestling. So that's true. But if we're just talking about the tournament helping him, think about it. I'll just even do pay-per-view, Dave. Mm-hmm. So an international incident, I don't think he's in it.
No, wasn't on it.
Nope.
Didn't have a match.
Nope. SummerSlam. He's
on the
beating
pre-show.
Yokozuna on the pre-show, on the free-for-all. Mind Games. Does not wrestle.
The interview segment. Very good promo.
Great promo. Buried Alive. He's curtain jerking with Triple H. It's not a bad match. It's actually not a bad match. It's a solid pay-per-view 96 match. And then November he wrestles Brett. So that whole stretch, did winning the King of the Ring really do anything to help him?
Well,
not really.
Let me ask you this though. I hear your argument, and I get your argument, but let me flip it round a little bit.
Sure, of course.
If he doesn't win 96, we don't get that promo.
True.
And it's clear and obvious that promo, it stood out. It stood out to the fans and it stood out to Vince. Following that, yes, we might not be getting many matches, but he started getting more and more promo time. And that Mind Games Mind Games promo and interview with Pillman and Owen is just, that's legendary. That's one of the great,
awesome.
That's one of the great interviews of all time. Mm-hmm. Now, I would argue if Triple H was to win that tournament, we never get stone cold in. We never get that interview, and I question whether or not he would have been anything more than the mechanic then. And yes, he may very well have still had a great match with Bret Hart, and he may very well have still moved into a strong position in the company.
Correct.
But would he have ever achieved what he got without the promo? I think that's the key to it all. I think the promo is what put him in everyone's mind. That the fans the next night were rabid for him. They wanted to hear him talk more because he did, in one night, he did a promo that no one had ever heard before. He was cussing, he was swearing, he was mouthing off, telling Doc, telling the fans to shut up, telling Doc, telling him to piss off. That didn't happen. And whether he was whether he did it off the cuff, whether Vince gave him permission, who knows? But I think without that promo, so if Hunter wins, we don't get the promo. Austin still has a strong, solid career, but I don't think anything ever happens beyond he wrestles Hart, maybe wrestles Hart a second time, but we don't get into the legendary feud that we got, and then you don't get the catalyst to McMahon, and it all stems from Austin going off script, essentially, whether he did or not. But I think you understand where I'm coming from. He did a promo that had never been done before, and that's what got him attention. And if Hunter keeps the victory, we don't get any of that. And Steve is probably viewed as the good hand who can't talk, which is that's how he came into the company, the good hand who can't talk. So I think he needed it more than anything else.
Good point. I think, it's more the promo than the wins. But all right, I'll give you that. You make a good point on that. That is very true.
All right.
So, not that I was going to change it anyway, but
no, we're not changing it. So yes, we're leaving Austin in the victory. So 97, we move to 97, and Triple H gets his mate good. They give him the win. Again, I think this was the right call. I think that it was the right call. The only other person in the company, and this is, I'm going to throw this out there, the only other person in the company at that time who I think would have benefited from it would have been Brian Pillman. It would have essentially been his first televised return. And with how Austin had used it, you could see Pillman, the Pillman character, having him win King of the Ring might have allowed him to sort of get back in everyone's face and do a promo, and maybe it would have skyrocketed him as well. Sadly, he doesn't, he unfortunately passes away not long, only a few months later, and it wouldn't have amounted to where we'd hope it would go. But he's the only person I could see who would really benefit from being given the King of the Ring that year outside of Hunter.
Probably. That's not a bad pick. I mean, I maybe you flip the script and you have Mankind win it. Maybe.
But did he need at this point the groundswell had happened, that the interviews had aired and he was on his path. I don't think in fact, losing helped him more, I think. Because then you built to the next couple of the next couple of pay-per-views, and that international the Canadian Stampede the battle around the arena brawl, and leading to the cage match at SummerSlam. Like, you don't get any of that if he wins. If he wins, he'll be in another different direction. But because he loses and Hunter beats him down, we get that series, which I don't think Mick gets as big a career push if he wins as he does losing it.
Right. No, good call. Yeah, I would have just given it to Triple H. He's the only one really that it would have helped at this point in 97 with the way the roster was. Yeah, I agree with you on that. We don't have to go much further than that. I think Triple H was the right choice there.
Yeah. Oh, you would say that. Of course you'd say that.
Triple H should have won everyone after this, including this one we're about to talk about. No.
Well, you know what? 98. Look, again, we've got to give it to them. This 3 years in a row, they've come up with a good winner. Ken Shamrock won in 98, and I don't think anyone's really going to complain about that as a victory. I think Shamrock was on the up. He'd had the series of matches with Rock. He basically gets his revenge on the Rock finally, winning the tournament by beating the Rock, and I think it was, again, it's not I don't have any problem with this one. I think it's a good result and probably the right outcome for where the company is going. Now, there are a couple of names I'll throw out in a minute for potential other winners, but your thoughts? How do you feel about Shamrock winning in '98? Do you agree it was probably that's the way to go?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anybody else because I can't think of anybody else at that moment. I mean, The Rock had already kind of passed like the needing of this tournament. Somehow between the end of 97 and this tournament, he had already passed the needing of this tournament. Yes, he makes it to the final, ends up beating Triple H in the quarters, but The Rock had already passed this moment of needing this tournament. So giving it to him, having him win it would have been pointless.
Yeah. Severin could have been Dan Severin could have been someone who could have benefited from this tournament. He had that history of being the tournament guy in UFC, and certainly, you know, if we go by what we've heard, their original plan was to build to some form of Shamrock Severin match. I wouldn't have had them meet at King of the Ring, but Severin winning, I think, would have been viable. Yeah, he's one I could see benefit. Someone who could have, someone whose career could probably have been helped by it. I wonder is Farouk, who's been booted out of his own nation, really became second fiddle to Rock, and his career was on a downward path at this time. If you wanted to keep him relevant as a singles guy, maybe putting Farouk over, but I don't think that's the way to go. But I'm just throwing out a name of someone whose career in the company would have benefited from winning this tournament at that time. Maybe having him beat The Rock in the final, that would have been a good one-night story again.
Yeah, I mean, I like that one. Yeah. Otherwise, I think Shamrock would have been fine. I mean, maybe Jarrett. Not really.
I think Jarrett would have benefited a different year.
Yeah. Had he not been such a pain in the ass in 95, maybe he'd have won that one. Could have put him on that one. That would have been. Considering the whole July pay-per-view was about him. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we're in agreement. I think that they got it right again. So 3 years in a row, we've got it right. 3 years in a row, we're sitting there going, hey, this is the best option available to them. I think that's really good. Well, there we go, Vince. Thank you very much. If we just left it there and kept that momentum going, we'd all be happy. But 1999 comes around, and well, what do we say? Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn? Really?
Well,
really?
I mean, at the moment, he was the guy that, I think he was the guy that they thought would be the next singles guy. I mean, you look at the rest of this tournament, the only one that would have been pretty great, and of course, you know, she did win in the first round, but she lost in the quarters, was China.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of cool.
That's what I was thinking. That would actually have been a really good idea. This concept, because they were about to give her a big push. I mean, the whole build up to SummerSlam, you had, and it's a great story. Whatever you think of her in-ring ability, I always liked the build to SummerSlam when all of a sudden China was in the world title match for a short period of time. Like she was put into that position with the whole Triple H, number one contender matches and all that. It was a really fun thing, but they were really starting to strap the rocket to China. And of course, later in the year, she wins the IC title and does the series with both Jarrett and Jericho.
Right.
So it's I really think China would have been a great one to crown, and then you could have even had her do I'm the queen of the ring. I don't need to be king. And you've got Hunter as a previous king, and who's a previous king of the ring winner. They could have, because they were still together for a short period of time, you really could have played up the whole king and queen of the company. I think that could have been a fun little storyline they could have worked with as part of Hunter's rise to the really to the pinnacle of the company.
Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, I know they tried to do the whole disintegrating of DX, which they did do with this tournament, but I think China winning would have been pretty great. The only other one that maybe would have been helpful, although at this point he was kind of already buried in the mid card, would have been Kane.
Yeah.
But I kind of like, or have Viscera win and he becomes the first 2-time winner since. No, I'm not doing that. That's not happening. Yeah, I would have. I think they thought Billy Gunn was the right guy, but little did they know The Rock was going to totally destroy him. It was going to happen. I would have probably done China. I think that would have been a cool boost for her, leading all the way to her beating Jarrett and winning the IC belt later in the year. And they kind of treated her as legit because they got her involved in the whole, world title thing with Austin and Triple H and Mick throughout the summer. And
I think it would have fit the character, it would have fit the storylines, and it would have been a massive boost. It would have been unique. It would have been so unique because we're not going to get that now with the women's division being seen so well, trying to be pushed as on par and equal with the men's divisions in the modern company. You're not going to have Charlotte's not going to win a King of the Ring tournament. They're going to do a Queen of the Ring tournament. Charlotte would win that. So right. I think you're never going to get that opportunity again. And I think it was the perfect time and the right time. They could have pulled the trigger on it, and China, I think, would have been. I think the crowd would have loved it. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. Wrong DX member winning that tournament.
That's right. And it would have played in good to have her beat all 3 DX members on the way to the if she'd beaten each of them, X-Pac, Road Dogg, and Billy Gunn, each stage really, because at each stage it would be, they could play the storyline of, we didn't, Road Dogg could say, I never really thought about that, and China could say, I am the better member. I beat you all. So yeah,
right.
It worked.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's skip into 2000, and I don't know that we're spending much time on this one because 2000 is right in the middle of the rise of the great one. Last episode, I named him as my number one draft pick. Yep. And it's because I'm a massive, massive fan of this man. I think he's a legend. Yep. I think he was one of the greatest ever in ring, and that is the man himself, the Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, winner of the 2000 tournament. By the end of the year, he already won the Intercontinental title. He was the Eurocontinental champion at WrestleMania that year. Wins the King of the Ring, and a few months later, he's world champion. I mean, it's the perfect year for Angle, and I can't think of anyone else who should have. There's a couple of guys who, you could go, well, if Angle wasn't to win, you could see, you got a couple of guys there you could see who would benefit from it, but I don't think anyone deserves to win over Angle.
No, not at all. I mean, this tournament, the brackets are freaking gigantic. You have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. 32-person tournament, including China, who made it to the quarters again, except this time, or second round, she lost to her boyfriend there, Eddie. Yeah, there's nobody else here. Jericho was already kind of established. And him and Kurt have a great match in the quarterfinals. Rikishi gets rewarded by winning the IC belt. I don't know if he won it before. I think he won it before this. He beat Chris Benoit. Benoit flips out and pins. He gets all the way to the quarters and then loses to Rikishi by DQ. I mean, this tournament's funny because it's literally nothing but mid card, but it's pretty much the entire mid card because the main event was obviously that terrible triple threat or whatever the hell it was, or 6-man world title tag or whatever the hell, stupid thing.
But it's one of the few events where you had multiple mid card guys on the rise. So there are other guys who you could sit there and go like, and look, if we were to look back and go, he who shall not be named won it, or Eddie won it, or Jericho won it, we'd all sit there and go, actually, that's a good choice too. But I don't think any of them really. I think Angle is the perfect choice that year.
I agree. I don't think there's anybody else. We could go on to there's no doubt, and it elevated him, and you know, talk about perfect elevation because 4 months later he's world champion. It's crazy.
That's it. So. All right, well, 2001, and now we get we got the rise of Edge, King Edge. Yeah, you know what? At the time, I wasn't complete. I must admit, I'm not sure that it was the right time for Edge to win it. I'm just not sure that it was. I don't think. I think it's still a year or two before Edge, and I know he has his injury, puts him out for a while, but I'm just, he's really only just, I mean, he's still really, he and Christian have only just sort of, the tag team has just sort of ended as a thing, yet it hasn't really ended. It's in the process of ending. I think he's still a bit lower down the card, and it's a good boost for him. But for me, I always felt he wasn't quite ready in 01 to be the singles winner. I really would have liked someone, and I know they sort of back into that semis final situation in 01, but I would have liked, I could have seen maybe this would have been a time, maybe put Jericho over. I really wonder. I actually think this would have been the perfect year to do the repeat and have Kurt go 2 for 2. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah, I kind of thinking about that. You might actually be right, Dave. I don't know if you would have had Jericho because he had just, he's in the main event for the world title. So, yeah, I'm not sure who else could have done that. I agree with you. I think Kurt winning it again would have been pretty great. And you already had him taking on Shane in that amazingly brutal street fight, which he does win. And
I know, look, I mean, it's very clear. The story of the night is Shane sort of wants Kurt to wrestle 3 times, and he wants Kurt beat up when he faces him. But I think for what the tournament doesn't really do a lot for Edge that year. I think if we were talking about Edge in 2003, 2004, absolutely. Right. I think it would have been a perfect time. But I think in 01, I think Kurt being given the repeat and really being able to build that up as I'm the first. I mean, his character is built on the achievements. His character is built on I'm better than everyone. I prove it when I get in the ring. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I'm a world champion. Imagine if he said I'm the only 2-time King of the Ring winner. I just think it would have been perfect for his character.
Good point. I agree. And he hadn't turned face yet because at the time the invasion stuff really hadn't turned the corner yet. So technically Shane was still a face and Kurt was still a heel.
And picture that invasion storyline, the early stages, all that, when McMahon and when Austin and Kurt were both hurt and couldn't compete in ring, but they were doing all the backstage segments with Vince and Austin being the champion, and imagine Kurt being able to go, but I'm the 2-time King of the Ring winner,
right?
I'm the champ. You can picture the elements of the storyline playing out in those interactions being really fun, and Kurt getting frustrated that he's not getting the respect because of what he has done. So,
right.
which is what happened. I mean, it's what the whole angle was built around. So,
right. Yeah. But I like Kurt winning back to back. I'm sure Mr. Rizzero would like it. You know him; he's a huge Kurt guy. So I think he would have had no problem with that. Yeah, I feel like Edge. I mean, it kind of precipitated the Christian heel turn more than anything. But I feel like Edge really didn't get pushed forward until after SummerSlam that fall when he started feuding with Test. And then
even then he didn't get. I mean, even then his push wasn't that prominent because of all the WCW guys and the invasion storyline, how it goes.
Yep.
Edge got pushed to the back burner. I mean, he was prominent, but he wasn't. The arrival of RVD certainly impacted Edge's position as well, and I just don't think it really benefited him at the time.
Yeah, I don't think it did either. I think he would start getting more put over in 2002 when he feuds with Regal, and then that terrible Booker T, shampoo storyline to WrestleMania. Yeah. I think it was until the summer into the fall when he starts feuding with Eddie and everything that Edge really gets the boost. Then, of course, he gets hurt in 2003, and it takes a while. But, I could see Kurt winning a second straight. Why not? At this point, why not?
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that. I vote.
All right. Oh, let's move on. 2002. We're getting close to the end of the eras. 2002, the last pay-per-view King of the Ring event, and once again, we have and for the first time, as you mentioned earlier in the show, the winner has a guaranteed title shot at The Rock at SummerSlam, and the champion would end up being The Rock. And our winner is, at the time, the next big thing, now the Beast, Brock Lesnar.
Yep.
And once again, I think you've got the situation. It was the right time. It fit what they were doing with his character, and it was the boost. They were rocketing him up the card, and this gave him legitimacy for them to put him in those world title matches as quickly as they wanted to do it. I think I don't think he would have been as accepted at the SummerSlam main event if he hadn't won King of the Ring.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anybody else at this point. And this, of course, was the first big tournament. They were doing the Raw and SmackDown had split at this point. So you had Raw guys and SmackDown guys, and in the end it would end up being two Raw guys, Brock Lesnar and Rob Van Dam in the final. And again, it officially was giving them the title shot.
If you weren't doing the title shot, as I said before, this to me, this might be more when Edge would have benefited from it. I thought Brock needed it at this point, but if you weren't going to put Brock over, Edge would have benefited from it in 2002. I think it would have really given him that boost to the next level.
I also think, and he was in the final, I think RVD could have gotten a boost from winning this too.
Yeah.
So,
totally agree.
Yeah. So there's a couple guys there. if there wasn't a title shot. But obviously they realized after a couple months they were strapping the rocket ship to Brock to get to, and Rock obviously, at the time Taker was champion. Him and Triple H would have it was like watching grass grow. And listen, I'm a very objective guy, Dave. You know that. I have always gave my criticisms of Triple H matches when warranted, and this one's warranted. This match is not good. Not good at all. So obviously at the time, you're thinking that Taker is going to be the champion going to SummerSlam. And of course, a month later at Vengeance, that wouldn't happen. The Rock would win. And of course, Brock beat Rock at SummerSlam. So, but if you're not doing a title shot, and if you weren't doing that, I would have I like your Edge thinking. I would have also liked RVD to maybe win the tournament too. I think that would have been a good boost for him as well. Similar to Edge. They both were really over, but obviously Edge would end up having good O2s. A lot of people think that Triple H got screwed at Unforgiven against Triple H when the World Heavyweight Championship was created. So I don't know. But and then they decided, you know what, this whole tournament thing is not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, no, we need to go in different directions. We don't get a King of the Ring for 4 years. We don't get it on pay-per-view ever again, and then it comes back as a television event. Live on, I think it was live on Raw, was it, or live on SmackDown, or did they do it over a series of weeks?
I think they did it over a series of weeks. Most of the matches were on SmackDown. It was a SmackDown-centric tournament.
Right. And our winner in 2006 is, it's the rise of King Booker.
Yes.
What now, again, we talk about the way Owen used the King of the Ring victory to propel forward. You can't deny how well Booker used this victory to reinvent himself and reboost his career. Really did reboost his career winning this tournament.
Yes, I agree. I mean, he had good feuds with. I mean, he had a good feud with Cena in 2004, and he had a good feud with what would be Benoit in 2005. But I do think that this kind of got him back. Instead of being the mid-card glue guy that's putting over others, this was the moment for Booker T to kind of get back to the top of the level. And, of course, most of the matches would be on SmackDown. The final would take place at the Judgment Day pay-per-view that year. And, of course, that pay-per-view would be known... Well, that's 2005. What's the Judgment Day 2006 main event? God, I don't even remember it. Judgment Day 2006? Judgment Day 2006. Why am I blanking? What the hell was the Judgment Day 2006 main event? I don't even remember. Oh, my God. It had to have been. It wasn't Batista because he was hurt. What the hell was the Judgment Day 2006 main event? Why am I totally farting on this? It was Ray and JBL. It was Ray and JBL. Okay, that's why I don't remember. Okay. Ray and JBL. Yeah, I totally approve of Booker winning here. I think it was a good opportunity for him to kind of reboost himself, reinvent himself, get him back to a main event level. And, of course, he would, because later in the year, he would win the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah. So certainly harnessed it well. If it wasn't Booker, it's really hard. If it wasn't Booker, I'm not sure where you would go, but there's one guy whose career might have, I don't believe he would have won it, but might have benefited from winning, might have been Matt Hardy. Because you've just had Matt, the previous year was the whole issue with Lita and getting fired, coming back, the whole losing to Edge. So he's sort of just come out of that whole time span and he had fashioned himself as a bit of a really, he was a strong singles wrestler at this point. So to sort of help rebuild his career, Matt Hardy, I think, would have benefited from being given a shot at winning the King of the Ring. But I don't know whether, coming out of it, I think it would have given him some credibility. So rebuilt some of the credibility I think he lost by losing over and over to Edge for most of the previous, sort of in that last 12 months. And, sort of helped him because, I mean, he did, he was always a good hand in the ring, and he was the sort of guy who could have, utilized that as a similar sort of way to what Booker did. You could picture Matt Hardy building a gimmick out of winning King of the Ring.
Yes, I agree. If their plan was not for Booker to actually come up with the King gimmick or use the King gimmick to kind of elevate himself to eventually become World Heavyweight Champion, I think Matt Hardy would have been a fine pick. He would end up pushing himself into 2007. He would feud with MVP. Help put MVP over as a good heel. Yeah, I think Matt Hardy would have been a fine pick. I'm looking at some of the other names. I think Bobby Lashley, I don't think he was quite ready yet. Most everybody else at this point, like Randy Orton and Benoit, Mark Henry, like those guys, they didn't need this. I think that Booker, it definitely was a little extra rocket fuel spurt to get him to the level where he could become world champion. But I like the Matt Hardy pick. That's an interesting one, Dave, because he was kind of mired in no man's land, really. And I think that would have been a boost for him. I like that pick. I like the Matt Hardy pick. But definitely, I'm not upset with Booker. I think he definitely, at the time, needed the kind of boost to get him to the next level. So, yeah. I approve.
All right. Well, let's jump. We now jump 2 years in the future. And 2010 is the next time the tournament runs. Again, run on television. And I think this time it was run as a one night. I think it was one night on Raw, pretty much, sort of one television show of Raw. It was. Oh
no, you missed one. We have 2008.
Oh, did I miss 2008? Sorry,
2008. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I did mean 2008. I meant, we jumped 2 years from 06 to 08. I jumped from 06 to 2010.
You're in a third universe.
No, I am. No, 2008. Again, like I said, on television. I meant 2008 on television, predominantly. And we have an interesting winner. Someone who I think was a really good decision to be a winner. It's just sad that due to other circumstances, he wasn't able to utilize it more. And that was William Regal. And, William Regal always had that air. You always wonder, why he hadn't won one before. And winning it that year, I think, was a good option. It was a good result. Whether or not Regal needed the rumor and the storylines is that they were actually prepping Regal to maybe actually have a little run, not as a champion, but to be a contender for the world title. That's a rumor that I've heard in the last few months that I'd never heard before. And then he had some of his other issues crop up and some health issues sort of put him out of business and out of action for a while and sort of stop that push. So it's a bit of a shame, but where things are at in 08, it's hard to really sort of look at who would have benefited from winning King of the Ring. Maybe JBL might have been someone who could have benefited from it. Maybe with the utilization that I'm going to try and buy it. Sort of that $1 million man. Almost what they did on the house show with DiBiase, you could have had JBL do that sort of thing through the tournament, buy someone off, or offer to pay them off or whatever to leave or lay down for him, and maybe JBL could have utilized that as part of his of his storyline. But I'm not it's a really funny time. 2008 is a really funny time, and finding someone who would have benefited from winning a tournament as a boost to their career is very difficult.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. I think Regal was fine. Punk had already kind of established himself. He had the
money in the bank,
the briefcase at this point.
Yeah, he had the briefcase. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was already. This meant nothing. He didn't really need it at this point. He was carrying the briefcase around.
But maybe a fun little one, like from a final perspective, maybe Finlay.
Yeah, Finlay's kind of in that same category as Regal, like that grizzled veteran that could get kind of an immediate boost. Yeah, I think that's not a bad choice either. But I put him kind of in the same class as, and they ended up wrestling in the semis, and that match is pretty fun for only 3.5 minutes. Finlay Punk would have been a fun final. Yeah, I mean, Finlay, again, I think Finlay's in the same situation as Regal, kind of the old grizzled veteran kind of thing. I think it would have worked out. It could have gone a similar path. Yeah, I like Finlay.
The only other person I think would have been fun and be able to utilize it coming out of the tournament. That's what I'm trying to look at, is how can it be used? How would it be benefit someone coming out of the tournament? Not so much from their position on the card, but can you imagine if they'd let Santino Marella enter the King of the Ring and maybe win a King of the Ring tournament? I know it probably, at this point, the comedy was really well entrenched into who he was, but Santino would have had a bit of fun becoming King of the Ring.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. That would have been cute. Did they even put him in the bracket?
No, he wasn't in the. No, that's what I'm saying. He wasn't in the bracket. He wasn't.
Yeah,
but
no.
It would have been something that would have been fun to consider him and maybe put him in. I am the Ring of the King winner. You know.
Yes. Kings of the Rings.
Yes. He would have had fun. That's what I'm saying. He would have been able to utilize it in a good way.
Yeah. If you wanted to go down that mildly comedic route, but I think I kind of like your grizzled veteran thing with either Finlay or Regal at that point. I think that would have been pretty cool. Would have been good to kind of juice up the mid card a little bit, considering, and we're in 08 right now, JR and I. I think that would have been a fun way to look at things. Bit of it a little different. Yeah, I like your idea. I like your idea of either of those guys. I would have been fine with them keeping it with Regal, or if they decided to go the Finlay route, I think that would have been good too. The only thing is, if they did want to kind of boost it to a main event level, I don't think Finlay was quite there.
No. So, alrighty. Well, let's jump to 2010. Right, I'll get my years right. We're closing in 2010. Sheamus is the winner in 2010. They've moved the tournament to later in the year. It was in November. And again, you're in a situation where it's these later tournaments. It really becomes hard to sort of look at who would have benefited or whatever. But there's one name I want to throw out. Look, Sheamus was a good choice. I'm not going to deny that. Did he need it in 2010? Probably not. Someone who might have benefited from it after what had happened earlier in the year, Daniel Bryan. The whole stuff that went on earlier in the year with NXT and being fired and coming back and everything that happened around Daniel Bryan's career, Daniel Bryan winning the King of the Ring tournament, I think, would have been a good story for him and a good boost coming out for him. After because it was so early in his WWF tenure.
I think that would have been, at that point in 2010, probably good for the company. I'm trying to think where this. Let's see. This tournament was in the fall.
It was in November.
November. So we're past, and we're past. Nexus.
Yeah, we're past the whole Nexus coming in, the firing, returning for SummerSlam. It's all after that, which is why I think it would be a good option for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else in this bracket would have been. Who really needed John Morrison?
That's what I'm
Del
saying.
Rio?
I look at who was around. I mean, yeah, Del Rio, mate. Del Rio was still pretty early in his tenure in the company as well. That he might have benefited from it as a bit of a boost too. They're the two guys I think. That was the other one I was thinking of. Is Alberto had only been in the company for a few months as well, so it would have been a boost to his career. There are two guys that would benefit from as a push up. Sheamus had already been a champion. He didn't need the King of the Ring anymore. He was established at this point. Brian and Alberto would have benefited from it to help push them up, which is what was happening in the early days. The rise of the Owen Harts, the Kurt Angles, the Brock Lesnar. They were winning it early as a push, as a boost, and I think that's what it would have been benefit here. I mean, can you imagine Daniel Bryan versus Miz in the King of the Ring tournament in 2010, right after the whole NXT thing where, Miz had, waylaid him verbally so often? It would have been a fun retribution for Bryan.
Yes, I agree with that. What about Cody Rhodes? Too young?
Oh, probably at that point, maybe just a little too young.
Okay. Him and Ray. I kind of vaguely remember
2023.
Yeah, that is true. Him and Ray have a pretty good match. That match that opens the tournament is actually pretty good, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Drew McIntyre was on the down, not in good graces. Yeah. MVP? Or was he pretty much cooked?
I think he was cooked by this point. It would have benefited him a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But not in 2010.
Yeah. Good call. I think Daniel Bryan would have been interesting at this point. You're right. Sheamus, it just all it did for Sheamus was kind of just enhance his just overall character. It really didn't do anything for him in the company per se. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like your Daniel Bryan pick. I think that'd be fun. Going into 2011 and, kind of seeing his elevation continue, because eventually he would obviously win his first world title and all that. And we won't get into 2012 because we all know what kind of mess that was for him. But, yeah, I like that, Daniel. Yeah, I feel like this tournament did nothing for Sheamus. It really didn't. It just gave him an extra layer of his character, which you could probably do some other way. But
yeah,
I mean, the crown is cool looking. I remember the crown was kind of cool looking he wore. So, but yeah, I like Daniel Bryan's not a bad pick, and you kind of continue that rise and winning a secondary belt at some point, U.S. title. I think he had already won the U.S. title by this point. Just keep elevating him, keep him on the mid to upper mid card, and then eventually get him to that moment. I do think they had a long-term plan for him, as much as they call him a B+ player and all that kind of jazz. I do think they had a good thought for him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I like the junior line.
and certainly proved it in the long run. So,
I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
All right. Well, we jump 5 years, so it's 5 years between tournaments. The next time the King of the Ring is crowned is in 2015, April 2015, just after WrestleMania.
Yep.
And our winner is Bad News Barrett, Wade Barrett. And you know what? At the time, it was probably a shot he did need. His career had really stagnated at this point.
Yes.
And it was certainly a boost for him. And I think it's probably a good choice at the time. I was having a look at the roster. And at this time in 2015, April 2015, there is one guy I could see winning the tournament that would have been an absolute hoot from a storyline point of view and what you could have done with it during the event and after the event. Just hear this one out. This one out.
Okay.
So April 2015 is the absolute height of the Damien Mizdow character, the stunt double for the Miz. Can you imagine a storyline where the Miz is entered into the tournament, but each round he sends his stunt double into the ring instead? Or maybe one round he wrestles and Mizdow's doing his shenanigans on the outside. But basically Mizdow is put into the later round, the semi-final, the final, because it's his stunt double. Go in there and be my stunt double. And Mizdow wins the tournament, and then the Miz is claiming the crown. I won the tournament. No, Mizdow won the tournament. No, I won the tournament. He is my stunt double. He is me. Therefore, I won the tournament. I think the storyline would have been fun. And Mizdow at that point was so over that winning King of the Ring, I think it would have been very acceptable to the fan base.
Yes. Yeah. I think that would have been great. I love Mizdow. I love him in the NWA right now, but I think that would have been hilarious. I don't know if it would have made I think people kind of moderately didn't take this tournament seriously anymore, but I do think that would have been a fun little way to do it. I mean, you look at the rest of this bracket. I mean, maybe Dean Ambrose.
He didn't need it.
Luke Harper, nah.
I mean, we got Cody there as Stardust, and again, the Stardust character just wasn't going to King of the Ring. So, bad news. No, not that. So Barrett was the right choice, I think, at the time. He was a good choice, but I think Mizdow would have been a fun alternative, and you could have used that then to give another element to the breakdown between the relationship between him and Miz, and there's another element to their story going forward.
Yeah. I think that would have been a fun. He's like doing the pins and everything, and they hand Mizdow the trophy, and he's like, "Well, I won." Like, "Well, no, you didn't. That guy did." Well, no, the skits would have been great. The skits would have been great. The segments on TV would have been great. Like they do a storyline where like Mizdow gets to reap the benefits of winning the tournament, even though the Miz thinks it's him, and he gets locked out of restaurants, and women are coming up to him. Like, I think it'd be pretty great. I think that would be pretty good. And then Mizdow maybe eventually does turn babyface, and then Sandow gets a decent little babyface push. I could see that. Barrett, I think, eventually does win the IC belt, I think.
Yeah, he does. And then unfortunately, he's out of the company.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah, but it's where we're at. All right. Well, we've got two left, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to struggle because this is really in a time period where I'm starting to they're very recent. We got 2019. We have Baron Corbin winning in 2019, and look. These last few years are a bit of dark. I'll admit, are dark spots for me. It's not, it's well known that I've struggled with the product in recent years, and I don't know. And really, with the way the product is going, I don't know who else you would have put there in 2019. I looked at the tournament brackets, and you've got guys in there like Samoa Joe and Cesaro, who, well, Cesaro if he was going to win, it would have been years before. Samoa Joe could have been an option, but Sami Zayn maybe, but the way that in the recent years guys are just so up and down in the way they're used, it makes it very hard to see how anyone would benefit from winning in 2019.
Kevin Owens, I mean, he's already over. Yeah. The only guy in this bunch I think that would have been fun to win would have been Ricochet.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what they did here, Dave, that would have been funny back in the 1985 tournaments? Samoa Joe and Ricochet wrestled to a draw, so they both made it to the next round, and it ended up being a triple threat with Baron Corbin. Could you imagine?
That would have been interesting in the earlier days.
I know, right? With all those draws. I think I would have given this tournament to Ricochet, to be quite honest with you. I don't think anybody gives a shit about Baron Corbin.
No, he doesn't. And what did it do for him? It did nothing for his career. Nothing. Everyone hated him then, and they hated him afterwards. And we're not talking about hate him as in he had big heat and people wanted to see him get beaten. People just didn't want to see him.
Yep.
And they still didn't want to see him after he won King of the Ring. It just was a waste.
Nope. I'm going to go with Ricochet. I think Ricochet would have been a nice win. Or Elias, because Elias was kind of over at that point.
Yeah.
Now he's kind of just gutter. He's just junk. But I would have given it to Ricochet. I think that would have been. I think he definitely would have benefited from a tournament win. I agree.
Yeah. All right, and our final one, we moved to 2021, so just 2 years ago, and the winner in 2021 was Xavier Woods, and I remember that happening, and that was actually quite a fun little. I think it was good for Xavier Woods. It was sort of a way for him to step out of the shadow of Big E and Kofi. To get that singles win in a prominent way, beating Finn Balor in the final. I think it was a good result for Xavier Woods. Whether it's done anything for his career moving forward, I don't know. It really sort of has lost that luster now. It's really not seen as a push for anyone's career.
No, and I mean, he barely did anything with it because he took time off in January, and by the time he came back in March, he stopped acting that way. So, I mean, look at the bracket. Sami Zayn's in it. Ricochet's back in it. And he actually loses to Xavier Woods. I don't even think it mattered at this point.
But for
Kofi was in it. Now, that would have been interesting. They didn't pull the trigger on a Xavier Kofi semifinal. They ended up giving it to frickin' Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, it would have been fun. That would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of fun.
Too. But here's the one. If you want to look for someone else to win the tournament in 2021, in 2021, then why aren't we considering Jimmy or Jey Uso? This is in the early days of the Bloodline storyline.
Yep.
This is they're both in the Bloodline, but we've had that. Was it I always forget which one had the series where the Bloodline started with Roman beating up who was the one he had the main event matches with?
Jey.
I
think it was Jey. Yeah.
So he'd proven he could play in the main event, and I know they were focused on the tag team. They had the tag titles, but the Bloodline winning the King of the Ring would have been, at the time, it just would have been the Bloodline taking control and dominating. And then as the time goes on, as they move that storyline on, as they did last year, into Sami Zayn injecting himself, you really could have played it. And even now you could play it up as, well, I won King of the Ring. You didn't do that, Roman. I've won King of the Ring. I should, you're the head of the table, but I'm the king of the tribe, or something like that. You could. It's something that you would be able to utilize in the storytelling that's happening now. Which I think would have been a benefit, but we didn't know that that's where it was heading in 2021.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And we're also in the middle of the pandemic, so that at this point, so that also kind of killed the energy level. But I like it would have been an interesting way to with the bloodline now officially gone, as we saw this past week on SmackDown. Interesting timeline that comes out of this, and again, it's just cooking to the surface. Roman could have kind of coached him into the wins. Maybe they do a J. Maybe Roman kind of rigs the tournament so we have a J Jimmy final.
Yeah,
that would have been interesting.
And then he orders one of them to lay down. They've got to follow, the whole thing about you're my right hand man. So you could really have used it to push the dominance of the bloodline at the time.
Yep, I agree. I think an Uso would have been very good. No disrespect to Xavier Woods, but he really did literally nothing with it.
That's right.
Nothing. Yeah.
So, well, there we go.
Yep.
King of the Rings.
Yes, we had some interesting choices there. Nothing was as concrete as we thought when we went through them. Yeah, very interesting. So we hope you enjoyed this month's episode as we went through the history of alternate universes for King of the Ring. We hope you liked our analysis and some of our alternate picks. If there was a 2023 King of the Ring, I would have just given it to Cody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice and easy. Dave, where can everyone find you?
I encourage everyone. You can reach out to me through Facebook. You find me lurking the Place to Be Facebook pages. Reach out to me. Send me a private message. Always open to do that. And if you want to hear more of me, tune in to over on the North South Network. You can hear me on the Cronoso monthly episodes. I really encourage you to do that. I just earlier today laid down my segments for the next episode, which will be the main event and Saturday night's main event from February and March 1988. So building up the build and the growth towards WrestleMania 4. So check those out.
Yes, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott C. Podfather. Please follow the brand on Twitter at PTBN Wrestling. We do the wrestling, speaking of alternate universes and through the looking glass, I do wrestling time travel. I find all of the big shows that happened on this date. That's a lot of fun. We had a great week here in the PTB Wrestling Network. New episodes of Through the Looking Glass. Highway to the Impact. This is the new episode of Through the Looking Glass. New episodes of Highway to the Impact Zone. As I mentioned, NWA Crock and Roll returned. NWA Saturday Special. My good friend over in England, Luke Jennings. New episodes of the Memphis Continental Wrestling Cast and the Monday Night Project every week. Join Dave and I in July. Not sure what our topic will be. Should be very interesting. We're going to break down the main event of In Your House International Incident. Yeah! One of my favorite six-man tags of all time. Everybody knows that. Anyway, have a great rest of your June. We will talk to you in July through the looking glass.